Okay, so we are good. We are live. So as I mentioned today, Gilbert is traveling, is on retreat, so he asked me to run the class today. So we will start as usual with four great vows. So join palms. I vow to deliver innumerable sentient beings from self-nature. I vow to cut off endless vexations of self-nature. I vow to master limitless approaches to Dharma of self-nature. I vow to attain supreme Buddhahood of self-nature. Okay. So the last time I presented was sometime last year, and at one of the presentations I gave last year, I depicted how different across the centuries, different masters, Chinese, Japanese, and even Korean, pointed at mind. And this time I picked out one of the masters, and we will revisit his teachings and go a bit in more depth. So it will be on Matsu this time. And let me share my slides. Okay. See. Can you all see this? Okay, good. Um, and as always, I would welcome interaction. So if you feel commenting, just chime in. This is an informal session. When the cat is out, the mice are dancing. So this type of session, right? Um, I so as I mentioned, Master Ma-tsu will be the topic for today. So he lived in the Tang Dynasty. Um, in the middle of the Tang Dynasty. So from 80 years old, 709 to 788 AD. And the two books I used to prepare for this class, basically just to retrieve the teachings. The one is by Mario Podcheski, this book. Not sure you can see it. Here, he already changed his name back to a lay term. When he wrote, so this book is in two editions. The first edition, he was still a monk. So he knows what he's speaking about. He was a monk for I don't know how many years, but now he's a professor for Buddhism at Florida State, similar to Guru. Um, and he specialized on Matsu. And then there's another book which also includes the teachings. And it's interesting to compare the translations. Both are good. Sometimes they are complementary, so you have parts of the teachings which are included in the one book and not in the other. They both come with also a context, the story, and so if you are interested in Matsu, I would highly recommend these two books, and they are not too large, so it's a small book. And just to provide a quick idea, and then we jump into the teachings. So to localize Master Ma-tsu, he's here. So here at the tree, at the root of this tree it starts with Huineng as a sixth patriarch. I think this was 7th century must have been, and then it branched off in the Shitu branch and Matsu Baizang, and this then developed in the late Tang or early Song into the five houses of Chan, namely the Guiyang house. So this is related to the Matsu line, the Linchi. So all the Rinzai Zen comes from Matsu. And then the other branch would be the Yunmen house, the Fayan, and the Saodong, the Soto school. and I don't know whether this branch ever got a name. So just as a broad overview. Um, and now we jump into the teaching. So I'm not sure how much of the teachings are there extent of Ma-tsu, but in both books it's just a little chapter, so not too much. And this is remarkable because Ma-tsu is known to have produced a lot of students, a lot of students with realizations, so more than 100 easily. And they all, of course, then shaped the Chan school from then on. So Chan has been heavily influenced by Ma-tsu's teachings. So, and we start with what maybe you already know from last time or you remember, but it's always good to revisit it. And it starts like this. So unfortunately, I cannot hide the uh, sentences. But let's try not to rush through it too much. So the patriarch said to the assembly, all of you should believe that your mind is Buddha, that this mind is identical with Buddha. The great master Bodhidharma came from India to China and transmitted the one mind teaching of Mahayana so that it can lead you all to awakening. Fearing that you will be too confused and will not believe that this one mind is inherent in all of you, he used the Lankavatara Sutra to seal the sentient being's mind ground. Therefore, in the Lankavatara Sutra, mind is the essence of all the Buddha's teachings. No gate is the Dharma gate. It's already a lot, right? So, in a sense, one can only give a class about this first paragraph. Um, and feel free to chime in if you want. For me, what my takeaway of this is it's emphasizing the basically what Gilbert always emphasizes in his teachings too, that your mind is Buddha, which means the awakened mind, and there's no difference. And this is a theme which runs strongly through Matsu's teachings. He doesn't distinguish at all, to the extent that other Chan masters took offense and were a little bit kind of irritated that he would equate both minds. But it always depends on how you look at it. And we will go into this a bit later. So, the essence of the teaching, all of you should believe that your mind is Buddha, the already awakened, that this mind is identical with the awakened mind. And then he continues saying that this is exactly what Bodhidharma already taught. And if you still don't believe it, it's written in the Lankavatara. So then it must be true, right? Um, and it's the essence. So this mind, the Buddha mind. So we will see as the teachings develop, he's talking about mind, but sometimes he uses the defiled mind, sometimes he uses the awakened mind. So it's something to keep in mind. um, and it's typical in the Chan teachings that they play with it. But mind is the essence of all the Buddha's teachings. No gate is the Dharma gate. Any questions or comments so far? No? Feel free to
Michael,
unmute. Yeah, yeah.
just had a question on what does it mean to seal the sentient beings' mind
Yeah,
ground?
I had the same question, and I had it also, I think, when I first presented. And for this, the other translation was helpful. It doesn't mean anything other than saying it's a re confirmation that the sentient being's mind ground, to affirm that the sentient being's mind ground is the awakened mind. And as it's stated all over the Lankavatara Sutra. So it means not like sealing in the sense of affirmation. Yeah. And there are a couple of other sentences where I wasn't sure what it means, and the other way of translating is helpful.
Also, ground is in the sense of soil. It's the same word as like the fertile earth from which things grow. It's the origin or the similar to the root.
Yeah, and of course, in this context, it's also a translation of Tathagata Garbha, of the Garbha, of the womb. Yeah. And there's I think in the Vimalakirti Sutra, like the Bodhisattva work is depicted as how to say, tending the mind ground, like cultivating the mind ground, like doing Bodhisattva work. Yeah. Thank you. Okay, so let's continue. Those who seek the Dharma should not seek for anything. Okay. Very Chan, right? There's something wrong already in the attitude of seeking. Outside of mind, there is no Buddha, which makes sense, right? So here it's mind with a capital M. So which is the totality. It's all inclusive. So how can there be anything outside of mind? Nothing, by definition, in a sense. Outside of mind, there is no other Buddha. Outside of Buddha, there is no other mind. So it's the equivalence of what is meant by true mind is the awakened mind, which we already use. No attaching to good and no rejecting evil without reliance on either purity or defilement. Ron realizes that the nature of offense is empty. It cannot be found in each thought because it is without self-nature. Okay, again, a mouthful. And this is actually where one of the other Chan teachers, Zongmi, already, he took offense actually on just this statement. He wrote a overview over the different Chan schools and their basic teachings in a short verse, and then he commented on it. And he was not particularly happy how Ma-tsu equated the defiled mind with the awakened mind. And maybe if we have time, I can present one of the criticism. Oh yeah, I have it here. So Zongmi says, it's part of the other book. Now that the Hongzu school, which stands for Ma-tsu, Ma-tsu's teaching, now that the Hongzu school says that greed, hatred, precepts, and concentration, samadhi are of the same kind, which is the function of Buddha nature, they fail to distinguish between ignorance and enlightenment, the inverted and the upright. The Hongzu school always says that since greed, hatred, compassion, and good are all Buddha nature, there could not be any difference between them. This is like someone who only observes the wet nature of water as never changing, but fails to comprehend that since water can carry both a boat or sink it, no, since water can both carry a boat or sink it, its merits and faults are remarkably different, so not the same. It's interesting to keep this in mind. And for me, it almost feels often like splitting the hairs, but on a high level, and it's useful in our practice to to really see where one can split the hair if one wanted, but then also then to let it unsplit. And I think in this Chan prolegomenon, Zongmi at the end comes to the same conclusion, that in a sense all these Chan schools, the variants, they differ, but in their totality they still represent Chan. So anyway, but this is a topic for another time. So again, those who seek the Dharma should not seek for anything. Outside of mind, there is no other Buddha. Outside of Buddha, there is no other mind. No attaching to good and not rejecting evil. Without reliance on either purity or defilement, one realizes that the nature of offense is empty. It cannot be found in each thought because it is without self-nature. Yeah, so it depends always from what perspective one looks at it. And if there's, in a sense, no way to make sense of it if one tries to understand it from the relative. But if one can kind of have the mind's eye perspective, then there's all of appearances, including thoughts, good thoughts, bad thoughts, including actions, are just conditioned phenomena and perfectly unfolding due to what has been set into motion. So there's nothing intrinsically pure or unpure about them. What is more important is to understand the dynamics and to learn or to figure out how to shift the aspect. And then without a self, of course, the self cannot transcend. So what does this mean, right? I think there was a comment. As I mentioned, I'm a one-man show today, so let's see. It takes a little bit time. Okay, Tom said also pretty sure seal. Okay, yeah, this, yeah, yeah, yeah. So it can mean to seal, to recognize authentic awakening. Yeah. Any questions or comments to this? I mean, we have 5 pages of this, so and at the end it will become actually very interesting. So let's not get lost too much in this at the beginning, unless there's something really unclear. Therefore, the 3 realms, which means the desire realm, I guess, the form realm, formless realm, so basically all the phenomenal world. Therefore, the 3 realm are mind only, which is Yogacara, and all phenomena in the universe are marked by a single Dharma. And then this single Dharma, when you look up footnote 21, it says one mind. So it says basically the entire universe is just one mind. So, and take the one here not as one as opposed to two, so it's more the neither one nor two. So the Zen way of looking at what this mind is. It's ultimately not really existing, and it shouldn't be established. If we do this mistake, we land into monism, which of course the Madhyamika school tries uh, to avoid us falling into this trap. But here in this text and also in Huang Po's teachings, often you see this term one mind. It's not one in the sense of something essential. It's therefore later on in the teachings, they negated in this branch, they negated even the one mind. They said no mind, just to reestablish the understanding. But sometimes it can be confusing. So Tony says, per the other translation, water can be benign or dangerous. Yeah, but ultimately it's just one of nature. Yeah, and there will be at the end of this paragraph of this first teaching, we will see the ocean coming up, which expresses the same idea. Whenever we see form, it is just seeing the mind. So this is a good reminder, right? Whenever anything appears, it's just appearing within mind. So this uh, applies to daily life. Whatever appears, to be able to watch it as perfectly manifesting within mind, including you. The mind does not exist by itself. So this is interesting now. Its existence is due to form. So it has a certain type of reciprocity. So in a sense, mind depends on appearances and the appearance depend on mind. The mind does not exist by itself. Its existence is due to form. Whatever you are saying, it is just a phenomenon which is identical with the principle. And the principle here is, I guess, everything is created by mind, or everything appears within mind, as far as I understand it. It could also mean paticca samuppada, of course. Causes and conditions never fail. They are all without obstruction, and so they means the phenomena, I guess, uh, and the principle without obstruction, and the fruit of the way to Bodhi is also like that. Okay, bit cryptical sentence. Not sure I totally understand it. I would say let's continue. Unless somebody, yeah, Jake.
Can you say a little bit more about why mind does not exist by itself? Like I sort of read that as like that's kind of the samsaric interpretation, but from the
Yeah,
perspective of the absolute, I guess
yes.
mind doesn't depend on anything.
And it jumps, and it's helpful to jump
Okay.
always. And therefore, because if you stay too long on one side, you you create a
Hmm.
problem. Yeah. But this is a way also to understand the paradoxical Mahayana texts. You always
Hmm.
jump. So you never allow understanding to be built on. It's always whatever is established based on what it depends on. Of course, this only applies in the samsaric.
Hmm.
Um, but the moment you look at mind from the ultimate, the big trap is to turn it into a thing.
Hmm.
So if you do this, if then the best thing is to just remain silent,
Hmm.
not say anything.
Thanks.
Um, Whatever arises in the mind is called form. Okay, that's easy, right? Appearance. When one knows all forms to be empty, which they are, because they are just products of causes and conditions, so they're empty. When one knows that all forms to be empty, then birth is identical to no birth. Why? Because it's all part of a process. Where does a river start? Where does it stop? Of course, you might say it starts at its source, but where is the source located? It's always this problem, right? So, but this is a way to make most sense of these statements. There's no birth, no death, because it's a process. If one realizes this mind, then one can always wear one's robes and eat one's food, which I took to understand also based on the other translation. Just once you understand it, just continue living as normal. No need to change anything. Just maintain the right view. So a comment, the Zen teaching I said with today says past, future, they are just pictures in a dream, yeah. And I think Matsu will come to talk to this. So the present is ultimately only representations of what has already been internalized, and the imagined future ends up looking like what the past looked like. But they are just pictures in a dream. Yeah, I mean, it's good to contemplate in this way. What if the temporal assembly of events is just made up by a grasping mind in order to be able to establish an identity around it? What if all of these labels and timestamps are just fabrications by the mind and not ultimately there? And what would it imply in the sense if we were able to reorder the sequence of events and to not attach to it so strongly? So and to think this is the way it unfolded. What if there's more variability in there? It's an interesting way to contemplate and over time to deconstruct time, which Nagarjuna does in his teachings. And in the Abhidharma, for example, it's interesting, the early Buddhist philosophical system, time is a concept, is not ultimate reality. It's made up. The Mahayana comes to the same conclusion. Physics is based on time and space. In a sense, Buddhism takes the rug, puts the rug away under physics. What does this mean? Let's see. If one realizes this mind, then one can always wear one's robes and eat one's food. Nourishing the womb of sagehood, one spontaneously passes one's time. What else is there to do? Having received my teaching, listen to my verse. This is now the mind ground is always spoken of. Bodhi is also just peace. When phenomena and the principle are all without obstruction, the very birth is identical with no birth. So, which I came to understand because this verse is not included in the other translation. So, the mind ground is always spoken of. I think it just means you can talk about it as much as you want, but just realize that awakening is peace, is calmness, serenity, the stable mind. When phenomena and the principle are all without obstruction, so when they are clear, in a sense, crystal clear, then at the same time it becomes clear that this very birth is identical with no birth. So there's no birth and death. This is Heart Sutra, one of the claims in the Heart Sutra, right? So this is the statement that just with the right view, fully right view, all of these strange statements suddenly will make sense. Because one can truly deeply penetrate the process nature of reality and see even the process as an illusion, in a sense. Perfectly arising, therefore there's meaning in all of this. It's not like chaotic and it's not meaningless. So we always have to be aware of the trap of nihilism. Okay, so this would be the first teaching. Then comes the second. And any comments so far? Just unmute if you want. Otherwise, we continue. Okay. Everything clear? Let's continue. A monk asked, "What is the cultivation of the way?" The patriarch replied, "The way does not belong to cultivation. If one speaks of any attainment through cultivation, whatever is accomplished in that way is still subject to regress. That is the same as the Shravakas. If one says that there is no need for cultivation, that is the same as the ordinary people." Okay, so in a sense, it makes sense, right? So as long as there's a striving to get somewhere, especially when seen from the Mahayana angle, of course, there's a problem because duality creeps in. Where there's striving, there's a striver, right? Where there's thinking, there must be a thinker. And therefore, Ma-tsu, in his radical non-duality, says as long as there's attainment through cultivation, even through cultivation, whatever is accomplished is still subject to regress because it's still within dualism, so it hasn't really be locked in with a proper understanding. Where there's attainment, there can also be the non-attainment. That's how duality works. And this is the same for the sound hearers who try approach the Buddha Dharma in a dualistic way, which is a way totally fine to approach it until at some point one taps into non-duality. In the Mahayana, one addresses it a bit differently, especially in the Zen school. If one says that there is no need for cultivation, this is also wrong. This is not what Ma-tsu means. So he kind of corrects himself because this is a non-practitioner. So in a sense, you have to cultivate without cultivating. So how do you do this trick? Does this make sense? Nothing new in a sense, right? The monk also asked, what kind of understanding? So now the monk wants to dig into a little bit deeper. So what kind of understanding should one have in order to comprehend the way? So what is a proper attitude? If there's something wrong with cultivating, maybe there's something to do about the view. So what should be the right view with which to practice? The patriarch replied, the self-nature is originally complete. So here it's talking about the self-nature of mind. If one only does not get hindered by either good or evil things, then that is a person who cultivates the way. Grasping good and rejecting evil, contemplating shunyata and entering samadhi, all of these belong to activity. If one seeks outside, one goes away from it. Interesting, right? Again, because one's view is still dualistic. Even if one tries hard, and even if one tries to contemplate sunyata, which is a Mahayana concept, still, as long as there's not the proper type of contemplation with a proper understanding of not self and just mind, there's a problem. Can be very, very subtle, but there's still duality, which will, at some point, block the view and the realization. So, grasping good, rejecting evil, contemplating shunyata, and entering samadhi, all of this belong to activity. Where there's activity, there's an agent. And if one seeks outside, one goes away from it. Just put an end to all mental conceptions in the three realms. He doesn't say put your mind asleep, but he said don't add to more fabrications. So, and especially the conceptions, which is mind, which is kind of added on top of what is already unfolding. No need to add anything. So stopping this adding, this wouldn't stop the thoughts necessarily, but it would stop the constant adding of extra layers of mental fabrications. So if one seeks outside, I would just put an end to all mental conceptions in the three realms. If there is not a single thought, then one eliminates the root of birth and death and obtains the unexcelled treasury of the Dharma King. So this would be something to tell Descartes and his cogito ergo sum, if ever he were interested in Buddhism. If there is not a single thought, no cogito, then one eliminates the root of birth and death. So there's no sum anymore. Because there's no existence and no non-existence either. So it's always important to get this right. And obtain the unexcelled treasury of the Dharma King. And this relates a little bit to this dream-like comment. It's just awakening from a dream. Yeah. To mind, not to your true self also. Does this make sense? I mean, having followed Gilbert for so long, I think we know the tune. Let's continue. Since limitless kalpas, all worldly false thinking, such as so this interesting statement, paragraph here. Since limitless kalpas, all worldly false thinking, such as flattery, dishonesty, self-esteem, and arrogance, have formed one body. And of course, they come with a lot of selfing, right? Um, it, it's not just one body, it's also your body. That is why the sutra says it is only through the grouping of many dharmas that this body is formed. When it arises, it is only dharmas arising. When it ceases, it is only dharma ceasing. When the dharmas arise, they do not say, I arise. When they cease, they do not say, I cease. It's just the dharmas arising due to causes and conditions, even if they constitute a selfing body, which believes that there's a self running the show. It's still dharmas arising and ceasing perfectly due to causes and conditions. Even the wrong view doesn't negate the whatever is appearing. And it's interesting that the statement which is made here is like through the wrong view that this body is like a vortex, very stable vortex, continuing through space-time. The previous thought, so this relates now to this past and future, I think. The previous thought and following thought and the present thought, each thought does not wait for the others. Each thought is calm and extended. And just last Sunday at our center, we had one of Shifu's teachings about a comment derived from the Shurangama Sutra, which is a topic which also Go Shingfashe comments about. He emphasizes that each thought stands for its own, and what our ordinary deluded way of perceiving suggests that one thought follows from the next, this linear chain, actually with a proper view and enough understanding and insight is not truly the way it happens. That in a sense, each thought stands for its own, comes and goes for its own, and therefore this can be also stopped immediately with a proper understanding. And this illusion that is just that one thought follows from the other is just, in a sense, the attachment of the selfing habit. Yeah, which relates to the cogito ergo sum again. I think therefore I am, because it derives its existence through the thinking process, which is with a wrong understanding, it's seen as a linear chain. This is called the ocean seal samadhi. So footnote number 24, ocean seal samadhi. I always forget what it means. So you find it in many Mahayana texts. So Ocean Seal Samadhi appears in the Avatamsaka Sutra according to the Huayan tradition. This is the Samadhi in which the Buddha was immersed after his enlightenment, and from which he consequently expounded the Avatamsaka Sutra. Just as the images of all things are reflected in the still water of the ocean, so all phenomena manifested within the ocean of Buddha's wisdom. So it means, in a sense, all phenomena are reflected in mind and manifested in mind. The name of this samadhi symbolizes the vastness of the Buddha's awareness. It's unlimited, undefined, infinite. Fatsang explains the ocean seal samadhi in the following way. Ocean seal is the original enlightenment of true suchness. When all falsehood is extinguished, the mind becomes clear and still, and the myriad images equally appear in it. It is like the great ocean, whose water has been stirred by wind. When the wind ceases, the water of the ocean becomes clear and still, so that there are no images that are not reflected in it. So it's all embracing, it's all knowing, but it's still. It's the total background within which everything manifests and without which nothing could manifest. So therefore, it's sometimes compared to space also, and I think this will come up somewhere. It contains all dharmas, like hundreds and thousands of different streams. When they return to the great ocean, they are all called water of the ocean. The water of the ocean has one taste, which contains all tastes. In the great ocean, all streams are mixed together. When one bathes in the ocean, he uses all waters. Which means, of course, when you are a realized mind, everything is available in a sense and known. And the differentiation doesn't stop then, but it's seen with integrated as part of a whole. Okay, this was again quite a good dose. Before we go to the next page. Are you still with me? Yeah? Okay. Waishan joined too. Hi. Okay, number 3. The patriarchs. So now comes the famous thing. What Ma-tsu is famous for. So this is, if we can only make it to this page, we already accomplished something. Although it gets even better later. But so let's see. The patriarch said to the assembly, "The way needs no cultivation, just do not defile." So this is important, this second part. And I picked it up by coming across a Zen teacher I really like, Jeff Shaw. He commented on this, and his way of giving Dharma talk is always just one sentence. So exactly the opposite of what we are doing right here. And the way needs no cultivation. This is already what we heard in the previous pages, but the second part is very important. Just do not defile. So do not, the importance of not adding, injecting any attachment which blocks the view. Other than this, the way indeed needs no cultivation. Okay, and then it's elaborated on what is defilement. When, with the mind of birth and death, one acts in a contrived way, and contrived means fabricated, or in the other translation, it's translated as intentional, like when there's an intention clamped behind one's actions, which creates karma, of course. So When with the mind of birth and death, which means the defiled mind, the selfing mind, or it means with an improper understanding, when with the mind of birth and death one acts in a contrived way, then everything is defilement. So this is also an amazing statement. So even a little bit of wrong view, whatever you do is defiled. And whatever you perceive, like in a sense, in a weird sense, the world you live in is defiled because it's reflecting wrong view. That's one way, that's the way I read it. So there's, in a sense, no way out because all the defilement you move in is a reflection of your own defilement. But if the defilement stops, the world, in a sense, is perfectly manifesting. So whatever this means. But to work with this and to practice with this in mind, this possibility, I find very helpful. It also reminds me of this, what happens in the Yogacara school once the defiled consciousnesses, the eight consciousnesses, turn into their enlightened, awake, realized or perfected equivalent. The eight consciousness, the alaya vijnana, turns into the great mirror wisdom. So it reminds me of what's going on here. When with the mind of birth and death one acts in a contrived way, then everything is defilement. If one wants to know the way directly, now comes the famous statement, right? Ordinary mind is the way. This is Ma-tsu's phrase. If one wants to know the way directly, ordinary mind is the way. And Jeff Shaw, at this point, he says, actually, it's extraordinary mind. Because the ordinary mind, in one sense, it's very ordinary, but it should truly be the ordinary mind, which adds no extra stuff to it, has the ability to just stay moment to moment, functioning without defiling. So in a sense, it's extraordinary. So ordinary mind is a way, or extraordinary mind is a way. What is meant by ordinary mind? No activity, no right or wrong, no grasping or rejecting, neither terminable nor permanent, without worldly or holy. The sutra says, neither the practice of ordinary people nor the practice of sages, that is the bodhisattva's practice. So the middle way between these two characterizes the way we, as on the bodhisattva way, should practice, that it's neither non-cultivation, but it's also not cultivation. It's more waking up to whatever appears is perfectly appearing within mind with a capital M, and to work with this and to not add any further defilement, which of course is where the actual cultivation comes in. It's maintaining the right view, or trying to maintain mindfulness moment to moment. And this is the practice, of course, which takes a while to establish. And in order to always operate from the actual mind, from the Buddha awakened mind, which according to the Mahayana we have access to right now, but not allow it to bifurcate again and to boot up a selfing structure, which is the default in samsara. Yeah, and then, so again, ordinary mind, no activity, no right or wrong, no grasping, no rejecting. So it in a sense, neither terminal or permanent. So it says no attaching to phenomena. Just moment to moment functioning. Just like now, whether walking, standing, sitting, or reclining, responding to situations and dealing with people as they come, everything is a way. The way is identical with Dharma Dhatu, which means the realm of phenomena. So with everything which appears, the way is identical with the Dharma Dhatu. So you can also flip it around. Whatever appears is the way, is whatever, if we can just read it without adding stuff, that's the practice. Just living normally without defiling is the practice. But the without defiling is, of course, a problem. Out of everything is a way. The way is identical with the Dharma Dhatu. Out of sublime functions are as numerous as the sands of Ganges and the Ganges. None of them is outside the Dharma Dhatu. Out of sublime functions as numerous of the sands of Ganges, none of them is outside the Dharma Dhatu. So, yeah, of the sublime functions, which means undefiled, of course. Yeah, I mean, if you can help me crack the sentence, kind of makes sense, but feel free to unmute. Maybe it becomes clearer if we end this paragraph. That was not so. How could it have been said that the mind ground is the Dharma gate, that it is an inexhaustible lamp? In a sense, for me, I read it like this, like whatever appears to approach it with the possibility that it appears perfectly and precisely, and to instead of attaching to whatever appears, but to look further and to see why it appears, not through thinking, but through contemplation, is a way to awakening. Is because it's pointing to the principle itself. Maybe not be the most easiest to enter, but it's maybe the most direct. That's my takeaway from this.
I think it's a little bit tautological.
Yeah.
He's saying you have the sublime functions as numerous of the sands of the Ganges. The numerous functions of mind to produce the things that appear in mind all belong to the realm of phenomena, Dharma Dhatu. If that was not so, how could you have a phenomenon in mind that didn't come from the realm of phenomena? Of course, this fertile soil for the mind is a Dharma gate because all things appear there. It's inexhaustible because the function of mind is inexhaustible.
It asks the question a little bit, can you equate the phenomena with a function? For me, the function of awakened mind is awareness and compassion. Is there a way to read all phenomena to equate it with a function of mind? Maybe, yeah. Any other
Hey,
comments?
Mick,
Yeah, Nick.
quick question. Could you explain how Dharma Dhatu relates to mind, capital M?
Yeah, so for me, Dharma Dhatu is really the ensemble of all appearances, the realm of phenomena, and it's a little bit the same statement which Gilbert sometimes made, that mind uses the senses to contemplate. It's as if mind needs phenomena, means stuff, to keep the realization up. Maybe then the next step is to remember that there's mind. And then maybe furthermore it goes down the drain and full duality is booted up. But for me, that's the way to look at the Dharma realm. You cannot have just the Dharma realm without mind, and vice versa. So it's one comes with the other. And here we are talking, the Dharma Dhatu is the totality of all Dharmas. So it's infinite too. And it comprises, of course, also feelings and perceptions and everything. So I can see how this is equivalent to mind. Doesn't mean I can, there is just intellectual understanding. So, but does this make sense?
Yeah, that's helpful. Thank you.
Okay, let's continue. All dharmas are mind dharmas. Okay, interesting. Yeah. All dharmas, all phenomena are mind phenomena. So it's all a projection within mind, to use Lankavatara lingo. So all phenomena, even so, and is of course where the Mahayana starts looking at things differently than early Buddhism. Early Buddhism would say, no, no, no. There's mind dharma and there's form dharma. There's material dharma and there's mind dharma, but it's not all mind. And so in the Mahayana would say, no, no, it's all mind. All dharma, even rocks and tables, are mind dharmas. In a sense, we live in a strange matrix or in a strange virtual reality. There's nothing more real than this, but it's still a virtual reality. This is one way, maybe extreme way to look at it, but I find it helpful. All dharmas, okay, Jake, ask a question.
Just sorry, this is getting into a tangent, but I'm curious if you think that when we say all dharmas are mind dharmas,
Mhm.
if that only corresponds to kind of the labeling function, like there's a table in the sense that I label that something is here as a table, rather than that there's some other notion of this being a mind dharma.
Yeah, good question. Is the labeling where right wrong view steers in, creeps in, conceptualization?
Hmm.
Maybe this is where it's possible to reconcile actually the Abhidharma with the Mahayana. Because the labeling and this turn it into a thing, it can be the coarse form of it, which is kind of obvious, but then you don't know on how much subtler levels it still continues.
Hmm.
It's a form of reification, classification, and it's a deep-rooted habit. And maybe if all of this is uprooted, yeah, maybe then it's clear that the dharmas are mind dharmas, because then the nature of dharmas is revealed. Yeah. Yeah, thanks for bringing this up. And I think you will come to talk about conceptualization a bit later, let's see. All dharmas are mind dharmas. All names are mind names. The myriad dharmas are all born from the mind. What does it mean, right? Is it just our perception is like our segmentation, the way we segment it? Is this created from the mind, or is it really literally everything, every even single photon or an electron still created from the mind? I don't know. The mind is the root of the myriad dharmas. The sutra says it is because of knowing the mind and penetrating the original source that one is called a shramana, which means a monk, a contemplative practitioner. It is because of knowing the mind and penetrating the original source that one is called a shramana. So is somebody on his way or their way to look deeper, to illuminate phenomena without attaching to them, to ask for where does it all come from? And to open up to that the source is mind. The names are equal, the meanings are equal, all dharmas are equal. They are all pure without mixing. If one attains to this teaching, then one is always free. If the Dharmadhatu is established, then everything is the Dharmadhatu. Which I may be wrong, but I take to understand if the wrong is the right view about the Dharmadhatu, whatever appears is established, everything is it's again a tautology, but yeah, I don't know. If suchness is established, then everything is suchness. Yeah. Everything is precisely manifesting if one can really look as deeply into the why things appear. Everything is perfectly appearing the way it should, and in a probably ordinary way. If the principle is established, then all dharmas are the principle. They reflect the principle at work. If phenomena are established, then all phenomena are phenomena. All dharmas are phenomena. When one is raised, thousands follow. So this again shows how where it usually breaks. The moment something is established, everything is established. The moment nothing is established, everything is clear. That's how I read it. The principle and phenomena are not different. It's interesting. It's again the Madhyamika school. The absolute and the relative is not different, but it's not the same. The principle and phenomena are not different. Everything is wonderful function, and there is no other principle. They all come from the mind. And later on, I think we have to stop here, but he would also then go further in the last page, which is very nice. But he would talk about the essence and the function, like what the theme Gilbert has been developing in this year. Yeah, you can find this text online. So and I can also post it in the forum if you are curious to see what is on the last page. So I find it helpful. I mean, Gilbert's emphasis on just mind is kind of you don't hear it so often in contemporary other teachers. But in the early Chan master, their teachings, it's ubiquitous, and especially in Huang Po and in Ma-tsu, and it's so the Dharma is presented from this angle, always from this aspect, and I find it very helpful to have it stated so clearly because it's a good checking. From time to time, it's good to go back to these texts. I find it helpful to just reaffirm my understanding, and then you can go into the Mahayana teachings, the Shurangama Sutra, and the Tathagata Gaba texts, and they make sense because they only make sense when approached from the mind only, the just mind perspective in quotes. Otherwise, they look like tautologies and paradoxa and totally nonsensical stuff. Yeah. So this is why I like these early Chan masters, because they are not shy to put mind in front of your face. And
I
of
have a
course,
couple of questions. Oh, sorry.
They have been criticized by the other Chan masters too, and this happens too. Our teacher is criticized for this, and why not? But we have to, I think, to learn how to work with it and to make it work for ourselves. This is the most important in all of this. Yeah. Okay. Finished.
I have a couple of questions, short questions, I hope. I've seen this a few times in this text. What is the sutra? Which sutra is the sutra in question?
Um, it could
Maybe
be
the pl
the sutra says this. I think it refers to the Lankavatara.
Hmm.
Yeah. But it could
and
stand for, Matsu. Yeah, this is a good question. Matsu was heavily influenced by the Lankavatara, by the Lion's Roar Sutra, by the Shurangama, by the Tathagata Gaba text, and also the Huayang. So he knew them all well. Um,
there's definitely a recurring theme we're kind of riffing on, or at least my
Absolutely.
perception of the awakening of the faith.
Yes, this one too, especially this one. Yes, exactly. And
The sec
yeah,
the second question is, what does the word established mean? But I feel I can't understand this paragraph at all. I don't know what
yeah,
this word means.
yeah, here, right? If the Dharma Dhatu is established, then everything is the Dharma Dhatu. Yeah. Sometimes it means I'm not sure about it. Sometimes it means when it's posited, well, then you are in the conceptual, or when
Mm.
it's understood, realized. So,
So
good question. One would have to check the other translation for this.
at the end, when he says, "When one is raised and thousands follow,"
Mhm.
that's
Yeah,
also really interesting.
yeah.
I at first wanted to take this as, I don't know, like a criticism, right? We're supposed to put down all of our mental conceptions, but I'm not completely sure that that's right. Um, the the first case of the Blue Cliff record, the pointer says, when you see the horns, you immediately know there's an ox. When you see smoke, you immediately know that there's fire. I don't read this as a criticism of that instantaneous awareness. In fact, on the other hand, it might even be an endorsement. So I'm not sure that he's being critical when he says like that these thousands of things are entailed. Maybe this is just a statement of fact. I'm not sure.
Yeah, yeah.
I'm looking for any comment or clarification on what the significance of this sentence may be. What am I
Mm,
to take from this statement?
yeah, that's a good thing too. There again, it would be helpful to see to compare. Unfortunately, I cannot pull it up so quickly. I marked it where to find, but I think it would take 2 minutes for me to retrieve it. But for me, it's not a criticism at all, but it shows how mind works, and that the moment a little bit of wrong view or of reification creeps in, and one thing is posited, the entire world is posited and appears as real. Um, and is a bit like the statement at the beginning, a little bit of defilement. Yeah, your world is defiled. But this is the way it works. So there's nothing wrong about it. Just it can be also put to, to use if one understands how mind work. Yeah, it. I will have to check how it's translated in the other thing. Yeah, that's all I can say right now. Any other question, comment? Yeah, Jake.
Yeah, I think I asked Gilbert something, like I tried to ask him this question about the concepts versus kind of a more radical understanding of all dharmas are mind dharmas. And I think his answer, I have to listen to it again, but I think he said something like the energy of the mind creates everything. So it was much more like the kind of second thing. And I asked Santa something in a similar vein. Uh, and she said that this awareness, like mind awareness, is not something that's in the body. It doesn't need the body. But there are these sentences where it's like I think what I'm trying to kind of grapple with is how the body is in some sense like a conduit, but awareness doesn't like need it. And so like what I just pulled up was this, it's the poem from Hui Ning in the Platform Sutra, and he wrote two, and the first one was kind of dust doesn't, where can dust alight, there is no mirror, there is no Bodhi isn't some kind of tree. But then there's a second poem that's kind of the flip side, I think. And he says that the body is the mirror's stand. Or I mean, I guess it depends on the
Mhm.
translation, but that's something that I keep sort of coming back to. And
Mhm.
um, Yeah, so I'm just putting that out there as more of a comment than a question, but this
Yeah.
goes back to the conversation earlier.
I think ultimately these things have to be answered in meditation. And I mean, there's these states where Center is probably a good person to ask about it, where the body disappears. And uh, so there was never a body, in a sense, to begin with. So it's a kind of way of rendering reality. And there's a body, and suddenly it's gone. Okay. So was it truly there? Which rendition is more authentic? So, but until then, I think it's useful to read these texts and to break up what we believe is real, or I think this prepares the mind for realizations to occur much easier. Okay. Any other comment? Gilbert didn't sneak in today. Last time he mentioned that maybe he, yeah, Jake.
I just have one more question from the beginning where you said that some of the other masters were sort of critiquing this.
Uh-huh.
And that sort of surprises me because I do feel like, uh, it's as you said, it's like there's sort of meaning in this and you have to grapple with it, but make it work for you. And I'm surprised, you know, um, that thered be like a version. So I don't know.
Yeah,
Maybe that's
so
opening up an
yeah, let
impossible
me,
question there too.
since we have a little bit more time, let me, I've cut out two of these statements of Zongmi. So one was a criticism, we already read it, and the other one is his, for each of these schools, which were extant at his time, he always had a short, condensed description. So let's see how he describes Matsu's Hongzhu school. Um, so this is now his summary of what Matsu stands for. Since the principles of awakening are all spontaneous and natural, the principles of cultivation should accord with them. One should neither arouse his intention to excise evil, nor arouse his intention to cultivate the way. The way is the mind. One cannot use the mind to cultivate the mind. Evil too is the mind. One cannot use the mind to excise the mind. One who neither excises evil nor cultivates good, but freely follows his destiny and is spontaneous in all situations is called a liberated man. There is no Dharma which can bind, no Buddha which can be attained. The mind is like space. Here it comes. The mind is like space, which is neither increasing nor decreasing. How can we presume to supplement it? Why is this? There is not one Dharma which can be found outside the mind nature. Hence, cultivation means simply to let the mind be free. And I think this is a totally fair description of Matsu's school. But still, Zongmi has this criticism. So it's interesting. Hmm. This is, I think, what these Chan masters they try to always see in how can you approach this diamond, right? This is how Gilbert sometimes talks. Yeah. And to be the practice is not in order to figure out what's the right perfect way angle to look at it, but what are the different angles? And just by doing this, deeper understanding will be cultivated. Um, yeah. I'm not sure if this answered the question.
That's helpful.
It's a lot of text, of course, if you don't have it on the screen. Yeah, so me, this prolegomenon, this would be worth reading, because he does the same exercise with all the different schools. And of course, his school is the best, the Hotze, but it died out pretty soon. So, but just to see these different flavors of the Chan schools at that time, I find it very helpful also for your own practice. At the end, you see it's just splitting hairs, but to be able to discern where the hairs are split, this is helpful. Okay, any other comment? No? Letty, thank you for the Chan lecture. I enjoyed it. Okay, yeah. Thanks for joining. Thanks for hanging in there. And next week will be Gilbert again. And I will post this text on the Mindwork forum, so you can read it again. Okay.
Thank you, Michael.
Yeah. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.